at that meeting on the 6th to quote north of 20 million. Also not on this slide is $1,750,000 that the school committee is now seeking for the building B roof on at the high school. Knockmolin shows in this document at $350,000. MSBA funding provided. The MSBA has deferred in that program, so $350,000 becomes $700,000, updated to $1,360,000 at the meeting on February 6th. The same document needs to be updated for West End Fire Station as well. So my point is, as far as prioritization, what proportion of general fund net revenue is okay to allocate for debt service, or which department projects will face debt exclusion votes? Considering the availability of the Brown School and the $1.8 million cost of reactivating the gym and additional funding for building out the program needs at that location, that may provide some financial flexibility for these competing capital needs. I understand that Brown is not an ideal location in relation to the schools, but I would say let's not make the good the enemy of the perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is it for public comment. Thank you all. All right, mayor's comment.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good morning. Oh, these kids got up here. Well, happy early Valentine's Day. I'm glad Councilor Donahue is dressed for the occasion, which is great. Just a couple things I wanted to mention here tonight. Tomorrow we're having a Have a Heart, Get a Heart event here at City Hall at 10:30 a.m. You can register to be an organ donor. We're partnering with the New England Donor Services, and we're going to have speakers here from organ donor recipients to donor families. So it should be a great event. If it's a big crowd, we'll be up in the auditorium, but if not, we'll be down here in the lobby, and we're going to have a proclamation as well. I want to give you a little update on the DPS director search. The Collins Center of UMass Boston is still working with us. I want to thank our screening committee for working last week. We had 4 potential candidates that were interviewed. We've whittled that down to 2 finalists, and those interviews are going to be happening Friday. So I will have an update after Friday for all of you. But we had 4 really good candidates who applied. Year 2 of Streets and Sidewalks plan did not make it into this packet, but we have a final meeting tomorrow, so you will see that at your next meeting. We're excited about that. It should be close to 5 miles worth of streets that we're going to try to do this year. Plum Island Dredge still has not started back up. This is definitely something I'm getting tired to talk about. We went back and forth a little bit with Army Corps of Engineers today. We didn't have really a great update for me to share with you. As far as I know, the dredge is ready to go. They're just waiting for the conditions to be just right. But unfortunately, we live here in Newburyport, and the conditions will never be just right. So I'm a little discouraged. Again, we had an internal meeting today. We have another one coming up with the Army Corps. So when I have more information, I will pass that along. What else? They did, I will say though, I think I mentioned this before, but they are formally asking for a 2-week extension to their contract. So I'll let you know how that goes. I mean, that really is the most that they could possibly ask for, because once they get past that mid-April date, you're talking about piping plovers, and it can't go any further than that. So I will let you know. I want to thank the 7 councilors who attended the community service meeting last Tuesday and heard the Newburyport Parks reorganization plan. We got a lot of incredible feedback, so I want to appreciate all of you that took the time to read it and attend and give that feedback to us. I think we are definitely heading in the right direction, and we're looking forward to the public meeting on Wednesday at 6:30 here at City Hall. City solicitor appointments in your packet tonight. I know we had a pretty eventful meeting when KP Law came in here. I'm still asking you, hopefully, to push that forward so we can stay consistent with the charter, that appointment. I would be open to a smaller, a lesser amount, and then a full year, if that would make the council feel a little bit better about that appointment. I do have a couple meetings coming up with some possible city solicitor candidates, so I am looking. So again, anything you could help me there would be appreciated. I have a couple of department recognitions I just wanted to do real quick. We had that deep freeze a couple weeks ago, which is amazing now when you see the weather we've had the last few days. But a couple weekends ago, we had some really record-breaking cold temperature. I want to thank the DPS Fire Health Department. The fire department alone had 65 calls that day. 37 were water-related with burst pipes, and I just had so many people reach out saying thank you for the quick response and for helping them get through, some residents get through a difficult time. So I appreciate that. The new website launched Friday. I'm sure you all were waiting Friday and refreshing your browser, waiting for that to click on. So that was great. Please check it out. I want to thank Andrew Levine for all his hard work working with department heads and the community. It really came out wonderful, I think. And it's nice we're using community photos on there. There's now a registration hub through MyRec. So I want to thank Andy Egmont and her team for helping us with that. And a new reservation hub that parks and a lot of things are going to fall under. So we are excited about that. I didn't have a schools update last time, but I did want to show you. So we did have a school committee meeting last week. We talked a little bit about the capital improvement plan. You actually just heard a little bit about it from a resident. We talked about our MSBA application getting denied again. We talked about possible Plan Bs, so we're going to talk about that more at a different meeting. These were projects where we were talking about putting science labs over the gym and then also replacing the roof. Now we're really just kind of looking at the roof right now because that's a really high need, and there's also the middle school project. Again, these projects are in the millions, so we are looking at other options as far as the science labs goes as well. So there'll be more information to come on that, particularly next meeting. And finally, youth services. I guess I could just say ditto to all the people that came up here so far tonight, but this is a big vote tonight. It gets us moving forward, right? We want to keep moving forward with this. I hope we can drop the amendment. I don't think we should put a price tag on this yet. I think we need to get to full design with the designs that we've presented to you, and then I'll come back and make a formal request. But let us design the building that we think is going to be best for the kids in Newburyport, and we'll come back to you, and hopefully we get a good result. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? I do. If you had a different date for the solicitor, what would it be?
Oh, I threw out 3 months, but
Okay. Thank you.
all right, have a great meeting.
Thanks.
All right. So, moving right along, the consent agenda.
The consent agenda this evening consists of the approval of the minutes for January 24th and the 30th. There are no communications, nor are there any transfers. There are a number of appointments. Appointment 377, Becky McKnight, 11 Farrell Street, to the Tree Commission. 381 is Paul Suozo, 7 Hunter Drive, Water Sewer Commission, until 3/1/2025. Likewise, Thomas O'Brien, 11 Mosley Avenue, Water Sewer Commission, till 3/1/2025. Following reappointments, Greg Earls, 2 Sanborn Road, Hampton Falls, Building Commissioner, until 3/1/2026. Lorraine Ward, 7 Sullivan Drive, Human Rights Commission, till 3/1/2025. Kristen Farrell, 28 Spofford Street, Commission on Disabilities, 3/1/2026. Suzanne Gallagher, 3 Garnet Street, to the Board of Registrars, 3/1/2026. Following items are removed from their respective committees: Budget and Finance. Transfers 147, 148, orders 401, 414. General Government. Appointment 373. Planning and Development. Communication 455, appointment 366, 367, 363, 369, 370, 374, and 371, and Order 416. Public Works and Safety, appointment 375. And that, President, is the consent agenda this evening.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Sorry. Motion to waive the rules and take transfer 148 out of order?
Second.
That's okay.
Councilor Khan?
Yeah, sorry, may I be recognized for 1 second?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. Sorry, I know we jumped ahead right away, but I just want to make one comment about all the appointments. I know we've asked before for resumes, and I know I wasn't always good about watching that, but I do think it'd be great anytime we get appointments to also have resumes included. Thank you. Just want to make that note.
Thank you, Councilor Khan. Back to the motion on the floor. Emergency.
Not an emergency, just
Sorry.
to waive the rules.
Waive the
to
rules,
take it out of
sorry.
order. Yep.
All those in favor to waive the rules to take transfer 148 out of order, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, you have the floor, Councilor Z.
Thank you. Motion to approve transfer 148 as amended out of committee.
Second.
Thank you. So this is the committee report. The Committee on Budget and Finance met on transfer 148. I probably don't have to give all this context, but this is one of several items in committee related. So we had a prior meeting on a different order. That was the bond, and then this came in the last packet, and so the committee prioritized this request, which is transfer 148. To first define the transfer, this is $200,000, Madam President, from the Kelly School proceeds to a new account, $200,000, same amount, for design services relative to the Newburyport Youth Services building. Just before we leave the source and the destination, the Kelly School funds came from the sale of a capital asset, so primarily the only restriction on the funds is that it must be rolled into something that has an equal or greater to life than what the money came from, in which case this certainly applies, as this presumably would fund a building which would have at least a 30-year life. So we did meet, as I mentioned. First, we really focused on the site primarily in terms of content, and that's because that's the agenda that we had set as we were continuing through the bond. So we did have several attendees with us. We had the manager of special projects, we had the chief of staff, the mayor popped in as well, and then externally we had Scott Hall representing EGA Architects, which has been doing the design to this point. We had 2 other attendees as well representing things related to the site, including Tom Hughes, who's been doing some of the external environmental work, and then John Eric White, our city engineer. So that was kind of the cohort that we had, and we did take some public comment at that meeting. I'll do my best to summarize. We received a presentation that's been posted to the committee's site if you're interested in viewing it, if you did not attend that meeting, as well as the recording. And then essentially we went through that presentation, and then we did have some questions. I'll try and summarize some of the top questions. One was, why are certain services like civil engineering, traffic, et cetera, not included? We received a response from a couple of different attendees stating that it varied between either felt that was either unneeded work based on the project or could be done in-house, so that was something that was discussed. Then we did talk about what is the intent of the $200,000 in terms of how far down the project go. Again, for context, we're considered to be at roughly 8% design right now. Response from the design team was that this would take from 8%-ish to 100% of design, including being hopefully ready to be in a position to bid. There were lots of conversations, which I'm sure some of it we'll have this evening as well, so I won't summarize those. We did talk about costs and escalation, and the concept that some escalation was built into the estimate that was provided here. Then we had a conversation about timeline and kind of the estimated timeline. The general answer was something in the 3 to 6 month range is the best I could probably summarize it, to be in a position. Again, additional deliberation. There was some conversation about the building itself having had an insurance claim in 2014. There wasn't a response at the time, but I guess I understand it was provided to me later that there was a burst pipe in the building, so that was something that was discussed there. And then we did have another lengthy couple conversations about characterizing risk around contamination and the potential for contamination and some of the testing that has been done, as well as considerations in and around drainage and the wetlands delineation, which, as many will recall, was drawn and then expired. They are good for 3 years when the lines are drawn, and so a new line was drawn and the line did move, seemingly in a favorable direction. We talked a little bit about asbestos in the building. DEP, generally speaking, if I may editorialize or summarize, I should say, the experts in the room felt that the risk was reasonably mitigated and the site had potential. Finally, in terms of the committee report, it was amended, so it makes sense for me to define that amendment. The language was included in your packet, but the condition that was applied was the design shall assume a total budget of $2 million. A complete project shall constitute a property that can be accessed safely by users and include safe crossing across Low Street. The council shall receive a copy of plans and updated cost estimates as available, but no less than at 50% design and 75% design. We did talk about that at length. We had 2 members present and 1 absent, and in the end, the amendment was 2-0, 1 absent in favor of the amendment, and the recommendation to approve as amended also comes to you with the same vote, 2-0-1, and that is the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zaid. Discussion. Councilor Khan.
Yes, thank you, Council President. So I was the one not absent, but also part of the Budget and Finance Committee. I did watch the meeting later, and I just wanted to add a couple of my perspectives on this. Definitely in support of the transfer, and just to go back, and I think we talked about that was shown at the meeting, was we allocated $30,000 for this study to be done by EGA Architects to give us some concepts and ideas of what could be done on the site. As a result, they did a really good deep dive into the different options. They met, and kind of part of that $30,000 involved kind of bringing community discussion, working with youth services, kind of doing as much as they can to understand the needs and the capability. And as a result of the amount of money that we approved here to be spent, we came up with what are some viable options. And we were presented with two, option A, B, and C. The administration is recommending option B, the $5.73 million, which ends up being around $573 per square foot for an 11,000 square foot property. So again, these are just kind of some estimates given the different design options. So I think for $30,000, we got a really good deal. We got as much insight as we need to know with some further details on the viability of the site, looking at the wetlands, and I really thank our special projects manager for walking through it through multiple meetings, not just from the budget and finance. She was actually here before this council too, walking through every step of the process. So I really want to commend the administration for being very transparent on every step, so that it's not just all of a sudden a number is being thrown at us. I do remember being part of this body when we did approve Low Street as maybe a place to have a youth services building, but the cost came by $8 million, $11 million, and I remember we all had sticker shock. So the one thing I really want to point out that's different is that we have been walked through the process with a lot of thought being put into the concept, so it wouldn't be overburdening us, that we wouldn't be putting really the the highest end youth services center, but really what could accommodate the needs of this department that's been running for so long. So with that said, I support the transfer. The one thing I'm going to speak now, which I was not at committee, and if I would vote against the amendment. What I don't quite understand is we are basically, with this amendment, we're really confining the whole process that was done with the $30,000. And we've basically taken it over, saying, well, it should be a $2 million project, and you tell us what you could do for $2 million. And if that was what we were gonna do, we should have we should have done that a long time ago. If that was really what this body wanted to do, is set the cap of the number of this municipal facility. It's unusual. I don't know if that's really done, where the city council will kind of give directive on the municipal facility and dictate how much money it should cost. So my concern with, if we support this amendment, is we've really kind of washed our hands of anything done before that really looked at the needs and try to make it work, given the footprint that we have currently there in that space. So while I'm here, I'm going to propose, if I get a second, to strike this amendment and to just eliminate all the language that was added by the committee.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Councilor Zaid.
Thank you. So I wanted to wait just to speak to the amendment because I figured this would come up. So I had written that, Madam President, Mr. Clerk, I just wanted to let me recenter myself here. I figured this amendment would come, and I actually welcome the conversation. One thing that I think is really positive is we've been having, I think, better conversations around this. I mean, everything has its bumps and its bruises, but I think it's nice to be able to take a deep breath and have a conversation. I think there's a lot of positive goodwill towards NYS, and I think that's all sincere. And I think my colleagues, those who spoke, the students, the youth themselves, the adults, all very sincere. And I think we've generally come around to the concept that there's sort of a general unanimity to that feeling, at least, right? There's obviously disagreement about the details and all those sorts of things, but we do care about our youth, we do care about NYS, and maybe the only 11-0 of the night, but that would be something maybe we could try and I'll just sort of acquiesce to. With that being said, I want to defend the amendment is really the purpose of my speech tonight. In the last 10 years or so, we have been on an absolute tear. We've built a number of big buildings, a number of big projects from every corner of the city, and I talk to residents every day, and I get this overarching conversation in various positions from both ends of the spectrum. But one thing is interesting is a lot of people think Newburyport's more rich, I think, sometimes than it really is, and we don't always notice some of the struggles that are happening out there, and then we hear about those too. And the sort of renaissance Newburyport has been having is wonderful, right? Lots of properties getting redone and all those sorts of things. Unfortunately, the way municipal finance works, we're not Google or Microsoft, meaning our revenue just goes on a straight line target, and the more houses get redone, we get paid more, and we have more. And so what does concern me is a lot of the same voices, though, particularly on the council, are also constantly clamoring for more affordable housing. And how do you make Newburyport more affordable? And what are we concerned about with people being able to stay in their homes? And frankly, these sentiments are 100% sincere as well. And I truly believe that people are trying to balance these things to one another, and I am as well. Before I get into the numbers that are important to me, because that's where I live, and I am known to be a policy wonk, and that's who I'm going to be forever, so I'm going to lean into it. But I do want to acknowledge that there are serious concerns about this site. And I think the Ward 4 councillor has done a tremendous job of trying to ask those questions. It is her area of expertise, and I do have a tremendous amount of trust there. But there are risk factors around contamination. We've done some things to mitigate that by doing borings and so forth. There are some real concerns around wetlands and flooding. We've tried to do some mitigation around that by measuring things. And I'm just going to sort of absolve myself by saying that I asked a lot of questions of the experts, and according to them, they feel that the site can be built upon. And I still question that, but at the same time, at some point, when you've done some measure of risk mitigation, you have to accept it. The second thing that I want to say is we have to recognize that we're at 8% design. So it's a very interesting conversation about limiting the scope, or the scope is already really far down the road, which are two different things we've heard tonight. Which one is true? I guess that's a matter of debate. But what I will say is that, we put the $30,000 in as a way to start to define what the scope of the project is. And with due respect to my at-large colleague, I have been trying to insert budgetary figures into this process all the way back to the first design phase back in 2000, whatever it was when it passed, only to be rebuffed by my colleagues. But that's life. And so I'm just going to keep trying, because I actually do think that we do need to put a number on it at some point. And we also have to recognize that we're coming into projects at a lot higher cost than we would like to. We just saw that with the fire station. So my role tonight is really to bring this conversation, unfortunately, crashing back down to earth, and to talk about some key numbers. So I really think we've got to have some responsibility here, financial responsibility. It does play into the affordability concept. One interesting thing to me as chair of budget is, what does affordable mean? What does it mean you can afford a bond? I think we can make the bill, if that's the question. It doesn't mean we can do it comfortably. And it doesn't mean it doesn't take away from other priorities, and it doesn't mean that it's free in the sense that, we can afford it. So I have a wonderful relationship with the finance director. Finance does have some subjectiveness to it. I think we'd be foolish to try and spend $6 million if you aren't hearing from residents that they're asking us to slow down. I'm afraid maybe, one just isn't really listening. That message is clearly out there. To the $2 million number itself, it's so easy to lose sight of how much $2 million is. What's $2 million? It's $2 million. I think it's a serious investment. I think it's defensible. I think it's something that can deliver. I have been listening a lot to what I hear the key needs are, including from the youth who spoke tonight, and it seems to me that a rec center, meaning a space for them to be able to go after school and do some of those sort of hangout activities, do homework, are very important. And I think for $2 million we can deliver that. I looked up the Andover Cormier Youth Center, which by many accounts is pointed to as a positive role model for us. If you look at their website, it says it was funded, and I quote, by over $5 million in private donations, $2 million of town funds, and $700,000 from a memorial trust. So to say that $2 million is nothing, or doesn't count, or doesn't show some sort of a commitment to your youth doesn't make sense to me, and I don't think is congruent with at least those who may choose to support this amendment in the end. My last few points, and then I'll yield, is why now? Why put the amendment in now? Well, I can't see myself voting for a $6-ish million bond, let alone the fact that I'm not convinced that option B can be built for $6 million. Seems to me the most responsible thing to do for the taxpayers is to have this conversation now. And again, speaking only for myself, I have been trying to impute a budget into this process for a long time. It's interesting. I don't know any architect that can tell you what your budget is. It's just not the way I'm used to hearing about it. Typically, we ask architects, at least in private life, to develop to some kind of budget, or at least some kind of area. And so to me, the last things I want to say is that's frustrating is a lot of folks sort of debate who's holding this process back. You know, Youth Services has been without a building. When is it going to have a building? When is it going to have a space? And in my opinion, you know, some folks don't want to take yes for an answer, and that's what this amendment's all about. It's $2 million commitment to our youth. Sure, we can get rid of the amendment. It probably could pass tonight. And in 6 to 8 months, we'll have an 8-vote requirement to get to a bond with a high unlikelihood of getting to that threshold, whether under this council or the next. And we'll have been no richer for the time or money that we've spent. So I'm really asking to consider leaving this, let the amendment stand. Let there be a budget for once on a project like this. Let us actually get some consensus. And then when we get to the end of the process and there's a bond, I don't have to stand up and speak for 6.5 minutes. It could be a 60-second congratulatory for all of us because we came from a point of consensus. I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zede. Further discussion? Councilor Khan?
Thank you, Council President. I didn't know if any of my colleagues wanted to
All
speak
right,
before
well,
me. Yeah.
So, someone who hasn't spoken, Councilor Cameron.
So just a couple of comments, and I was, sometimes when you're on all these meetings on Zoom, it all seems like it's one meeting, but I was at the Budget and Finance Committee meeting last Thursday, I think it was. And yeah, I think we've approached this issue from all sorts of aspects of due diligence, from, you know, certainly understanding the needs and, you know, hearing from our constituents, young and not so young. And I think that's compelling. But that sort of testimony is really a collection of anecdotes. When you really break down the numbers and how many kids are using youth services to one degree or another, that's really compelling to me. That's, you know, nothing against all of your wonderful advocacy, but kind of breaking it down by the data is really important in meeting the kids' needs. And yes, we have all gone through a terrible pandemic over the last 3 years, and we know, those of us who have children who are still going through this, and those of us as parents who've gone through it, you know, really challenging times for all involved, you know, regardless of your age. But to me, youth services and the services it provides, and a whole range of conventional type recreational type services to things that are a little bit more into social services, which I think is entirely appropriate, especially with the needs of today. You know, I think the need is there. Our kids need it. Our future kids will need it. I think it's, you know, as was said several times by the city engineer, the building, you know, that part of the factual analysis of this is quite modest, it's quite small, it's really not on a different footprint than what exists there now. We're repurposing something that, yes, the pipe burst in 2014, but it can be made as a solid resource that will be a demonstration of our public commitment to our youth. So, you know, and I'll take at face value that people are generally supportive of having strong youth services, and I know we will have disagreements around comfort level, around the budget, and for me, you know, there is a point where, I won't say we've been on a gravy train because we haven't done a debt exclusion or an override in quite some time, and I hope we don't need to come to that for some project down the road. But there is a point when every time we say yes to something, we are saying no to something else that we can't do. The money is not, you know, endless, and we want to keep our tax rate affordable. We did have a very serious discussion around our tax rate and business versus residential a few months ago, and I will probably be revisiting those discussions down the road. You know, maybe we get more money from the state at some point for some of our needs, but we can't plan for that. We just have to plan as best we can. So I think we can afford this within our current operating budget. I've asked the Director of Finance that several times, and that does seem, if you look at the presentation that we were given back in November, I'm not saying we have to get up to our targeted cap on debt within the operating budget, but we do have some room in there. And then other items will come off over time. So I think, you know, I think it's something that I think we need to do. And whether it's this council, and I hope it is, or it's the next council, or it's never, or some of these young people will be running for city council in 20 years. I hope this doesn't become one of those things where we snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, because we have a site that is generally agreed is going to work. Yeah, you can point to other things, the Brown School, Fulton Pit, Cushing Park, but we own this, we have site control over it, it's within our power to make it happen. Yes, we will need 8 votes on zoning at some point, and we would need those votes on bonding, but I hope we can join together and find common cause and really do the best that we can for these kids. Thank you.
Further comments? Councilors who have not spoken yet. Councilor Donahue.
Thank you, President. To this topic, I do want to clarify one thing that's kind of come up a few times for me since the Budget and Finance meeting. I did make a comment that I want to clarify was more offhanded, in that I would be willing to spend $5 million or $10 million on a youth services building, but I do want to just clarify that I don't actually propose spending $10 million on a youth services building. But having said that, I certainly think $2 million isn't going to get us anything that we need for them. And I also want to applaud the kids who did have incredible courage to come up and speak again. And I want to acknowledge that some of these kids are as young as my own son, who I can attest would never be so committed to come before a body of adults and do what those kids did. That was really deserving of a round of applause. That takes a tremendous amount of courage at that age. And I just want to acknowledge that. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Councilor Donahue. Further comments? Councilor Vogel.
Thank you, Council President. I can testify, I was at the last meeting. So I was not only at the last meeting, but I was at the meeting before that, and the meeting before that, and the meeting before that. And probably the meeting before that probably went on for somewhere in the neighborhood of the last 10 years that I've spoken about Newburyport Youth Services. And we are at a point where we have gotten a tremendous amount of information specifically about this plot, this building, the area around it. We have had experts over and over and over and over tell us that this is an appropriate place to build, that all the concerns that we have expressed are not really concerns in terms of the building itself and the site. So those questions have been answered, yet we continue to doubt that, which is very frustrating for me. And in terms of the dollars and cents, and the $5 million or $6 million that we may need to bond in order to build this building, numerous presentations by the finance director, and including a conversation as early as this afternoon with the finance director, asking him straightforward again, Ethan, tell me again, where are we with the money? And if I may quote him, and Ethan, I see that you're watching, and if I quoted you incorrectly, please say so, but in his words, this $5 million or $6 million bond is not going to put a huge dent in our ability to pay our bills or in our bonding or in our responsibility towards our debt. I think he actually said that it was quite a small project, quite a small number. I don't think that we are on a gravy train. I don't think that we are spending a tremendous amount of money on projects. There are plenty of projects out there, certainly. Some are immediate, some are later on. We've got this 2.5% cap of our budget that we are dedicated to debt service. We're well within that at the moment, and with proper priorities, and this one being. Want me to start over again?
No. Thank you.
In any event, you can listen to it on the recording. In any event, I can tell you this. It's time to move on this. I mean, we have all of the answers. We have a $5 to $6 million building. We have money to, according to the finance director, that we can afford to bond for. It's just time to do it. And I think any other vote is really a disservice to our youth. That's the way I feel about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Vogel. Further, other councilors who have not spoken. All right, we can go second round. Councilor Khan.
Okay, thank you, Council President. Speaking to the amendment on why I want to strike it, I think part of it is, I don't think we're saying the design can't be 2 million. I just don't feel like we have to specify it. So maybe I should just clarify that. We got those options. This effort with the $200,000 will keep moving along, getting down to those construction documents we talked about. We gave a little bit of indication what the administration is thinking with that one option, but let me put it in some context in terms of, by capping it, let's be realistic on the type of design kind of parameters, or almost I want to say perimeters, that we're working around. I'll point everyone to our Code of Ordinances, Section 5-85, which talks about all municipal buildings, including new construction, and the demonstration of trying to meet net zero or work to efficient design. And we could see, even with the fire station, we have a great example with the fire station because it's kind of, it's like real time. We saw just to have a net zero, meaning its own generating power, it was $350,000 to have a solar array. And I really have, I would ask everyone to reflect back to 2021 when we passed this ordinance, and it went through committee and discussion, and we had the Energy Advisory Council here before us. A lot of it is to reach actually city goals on where we want to be with efficiency and trying to actually be, energy independent, and how could we really make our new construction be good examples of actually where the state and the country is moving. So from that objective alone, one of the reasons too, 2 million kind of is not realistic to even meet the needs of some of our code. The other point is, like I said, we have the examples with the fire station. We basically approved spending $1,500 per square foot. $1,500 per square foot for the fire station. That's what it ended up being with the $9.9 million. Originally, when it came here in the first cost, we approved it around $780 per square foot. If you were to look at the design that we have before us with the $30,000, with looking at what's available, what could be done on that site, it's 11,000 square foot for the NYS proposed. The fire station, 6,600 square foot, and we're bonding, we're doing a 9.9 bond loan order. So I would ask that we be a little bit realistic, and that's why by eliminating that language, let the experts, let those who do estimations, we have estimators who are working on this daily, not us. I don't do any commercial building estimation or design estimation, but there are people who do. And I will say those who attended our Budget and Finance Committee they heard this council, they heard this body. They heard that this body did not want to spend too much. They acknowledged that we want something that could be within our capability to support, to financially support. And they also heard that there were concerns that we had around safety for crossing across the street. They heard all of that. I really do, again, I believe the administration's direction to not be overarching, overreaching, but to do something that could create a sustainable, long-term functioning building, not short-term, but long-term, that could demonstrate an example of new municipal construction. That could also be, and this is the part that's harder because we always look at first cost. Because I work in energy efficiency, I know that there's long-term benefits, and that will come over time. It's not seen in the first kind of cost, but you see over time cost savings with tighter envelopes, with no leaky windows. By spending more money on that first cost is really a sustainable, long-term, better investment. So again, striking this, to me, is really what will get us a project that is really worth being proud of in this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Khan. Round two. Anyone? Councilor Lane.
I guess since we're all talking about the last meeting, I guess I'll stand up and express what I went through. So yeah, if any of you listened or read the paper, you saw that I got a little upset. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I speak with passion. I hope nobody takes that personally. I want to apologize to anyone who did. I wasn't speaking to anyone in particularly. I was speaking out of frustration. So again, I apologize to anyone who might have taken offense. I guess the frustration comes that we're not more all solution-based here. I mean, knowing every one of you individually, I can say that nobody's against youth services. We all agree that our kids are important. I have so much respect and take into account what these kids said tonight in my decision-making. I'll vote to get rid of the amendment. However, we've got to come up with a number. And from the projects I've seen over the past 10 years, we set these numbers and they come in way higher. And that was my concern with the initial site for Low Street was, are we buying dirty land? Are we buying land that is going to cost us more money that we don't foresee? The bulkhead's a great example. It cost us a lot of money after the fact. How many projects are we going to do where we say, yeah, we'll spend $5 million, and then it turns into $9 million? I mean, the fire station was used as an example. That's something that the whole city needs. We need public safety. I can't pit this against that. I feel the same as youth service is important for a whole set of reasons. But I do agree with the initial amendment in the respect of the cap. The principle of having a cap, knowing where we're going to set the line. We can fit this into our expenditures. However, if an emergency situation happens, we just had a water line disintegrate when it touched the air downtown. So that infrastructure, the infrastructure here, within 100 yards of this building, is over 130 years old. What happens if we have a major event, whether it be infrastructure, at the same time that we're bonding an exorbitant amount of money for another project that's going to cost us more money? Where do we get that money from? What are we looking for grants? Private fundraising. At one point, there was a mention of we can raise $1 million towards a new building. Where'd that go? What are the grants out there? You can't tell me there's not solutions to this. So again, I just wanted to clarify any of the error that might have been from the last meeting and just say, let's just all stay solutions-based. And we're all committed to finding a home for NYS. So with that, I'm going to yield.
Thank you, Councilor Lang. Councilor Wallace.
Sure, just very quickly, I echo the councilor from Ward 6. I'm not going to support this amendment because I do think it's worth looking at the full build-out and maybe doing some phasing. That may be a compromise. However, I still have issues with the site, and that's because that's what I do for a living, and I've expressed my concerns to the mayor and his staff. But if I'm only one person with issues on the site out of 11 in the end, that's not so bad. I actually think the site is too small. I don't think there's enough parking. I would like to see more outdoor play space. It's the safety of the kids and the contamination, enough parking, that sort of thing. So that's where my reservations are. It's probably actually more conservative than how other people are approaching this. But back to the amendment, I do believe, do the full build out, see, what you can do for it, and seriously look at phasing or fundraising if the project moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wallace. Further discussion, comments? All right. Motion on the floor.
Roll call.
Roll call.
This is on the motion to strike the amendment in its entirety, as I understand it. All set? Roll call. Councilor Wright.
No.
Councilor Zede.
No.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
No.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Motion passes. Back on the floor is a motion to approve without amendment.
Councilor McCauley.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. So what's really in front of us is a motion for $200,000 to continue the discussion about the project. It now has no cap along the way. Just a couple of things that I want to state as a reminder to everyone that while EGA had provided their scope and documentation, this will go out to bid. So that will be a process that we will have to go through the procurement process. We'll have to issue an RFP. We'll have to review those RFPs. We'll have to pick a vendor. So some of the discussions that we think we've had with the architect may not have actually happened because we may get a second or a third architect depending on the way procurement laws work. Secondly, on that piece to that, and it's just kind of FYI so that we're all grounded in the same aspect of things is we will, come back. the debate that happened, much of the debate that happened around the amendment was pushing forward to already getting to the point of approving the whole bonding discussion that we had had. In discussions with the finance director, we could absorb, in his opinion, the entire $6 million estimate of the cost. But we don't know what that cost is when we're talking about this right now. We're talking about a $200,000 check that we would be writing to continue the process, to continue the scope definement, to continue the details and the design of how it would fit into the site. And in that would also uncover any of those things that we might have missed. Things that the city might not be able to do, let's say like the ground, the stormwater management, or the road, or the lights, or things like that. Whatever those things were issued to the city. So I'm not criticizing anything. I just want to make sure that we're all aware that this $200,000 is to pick an architect to move forward. They may come back for a different price, might be lower if procurement works that way to our advantage. The pricing we may get may be different than what we've anticipated, which is really my point at the end of this. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Councilor McCauley. Further discussion? All right, Councilor Zaid.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I just want to rise and explain the vote I'm about to take. So, you know, this is one of those ones where I think passing this is going to actually take us longer and further away from getting a solution to NYS. I know that that's a point of disagreement for some, but by avoiding the hard questions, as we've done on so many issues, and putting them off, only leads to more time. I just rewind the tape back to, I actually sat in the same seat, and the former administration brought forward a proposal to have a study done for 59 Low Street. And now it's deja vu all over again. And I stood on this floor and I said, well, here's a couple questions. You know, what are we designing? Is there a budget for it? Do we know? And several months later, I think it was, you know, I won't say the whole process was a complete waste of time, but we ended up with the Studio MLA project, which, as was mentioned, is an $8 to $11 million, which didn't seem to meet the approval generally of the spidey sense of those thinking about money. Ironically, now we're going to spend $200,000 to go from 8, by the way, all the way to 100% design with no checkpoints in the middle, and likely come up with a similar or same cost by the time the design is complete and the realities of the market set in. So to me, that will not be time or money well spent, and as a result, I cannot stand up and support it. There are just a couple things, you know, that just don't make a lot of sense to me, I guess. A couple of residents emailed about the needs, and that's been a conversation today, and I just want to reinforce that I am listening, and I keep hearing about the needs, and I do think that with a more modest project, those needs can be met, particularly the rec center. That has consistently been, I know it has different names, so I apologize if I don't refer to it by the right thing, but that concept seems to be a recurring theme. The idea that seemingly rec has been able to sort of proliferate out through other city properties, and in the summer is done in large part outside. Again, nothing's perfect, right? Spending $2 million in and of itself isn't perfect either for those who maybe want to spend less. But I'm just going to close with this. To the NYS supporters, I really think this is a Pyrrhic victory. I suspect it will pass tonight, but I don't think it gets us closer to the end goal. To residents who feel like nobody is listening to the clamor to spend less money, you're not being completely ignored. At least one person is hearing you, and I'm just not going to support it because I think it's unfair and unrealistic to put people in that position to come back in 6 months and say, I can't believe we ended up with a $5.9 million project, assuming it goes perfectly, when we funded design for a $5.9 million project. This is illogical. So with due respect to my at-large colleague, when they say we're not saying it can't be $2 million, there's no plausible way to expect them not to design to option B. And without any checkpoints in the middle, we are likely, unfortunately, to either end up with a negative result in the end or have serious discussions, in my opinion, about a debt exclusion if this is really the direction that people want to go. So with that, I will yield, and I just want to explain my final vote that I will take. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zaid. All right. Last time, Councilor Klein.
Oh, great. Thank you, Council President. You know, I think I just want to explain to my thought process so that, you know, I think if we're all getting that off our chest, why not me share as well? Part of this, a lot has to do with asking the right questions to the right people and listening to the answers we're getting. I will, full disclosure, I don't work in cost estimation. I am not an OPM. I don't manage construction projects. I am a counselor who is one that has to ask questions to the people who are there to provide them, to the people that we have actually paid money to provide information to us. We have opportunities in our committee meetings to ask the questions. And if many of us feel like we have not, I really am very appreciative to all the chairs who say, email me your questions if you cannot come to a committee meeting. Email me your questions, we'll have them asked. And I really do want to acknowledge, really, I think, stellar work that's being done by the administration here. Yes, we won't see until 100% of design, but we have a special projects manager who I know has been keeping us in the loop, and who will probably just come and say, hey, we have some initial kind of ideas, can I present that to this body? I just have full confidence that the administration is really going to be transparent throughout this process. And so with that said, this is why I'm supporting this. I asked the finance director, as well as others did here, what's our capacity? Can we afford this? I can't, he's dealing with the numbers every day, not me. And so I am really listening to the people that are working day to day in these areas. And that is why I am making this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Khan. Councilor Wright.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to join with the Ward 1 councillor and all the residents that have been reaching out to me about priorities and prioritization and affordability. It's not up to us to abdicate our responsibilities as city councils to the finance director to decide if we can or cannot afford something. That's up to us to decide. If we can fit it into the budget or fit it into some kind of a framework, that's up to us to determine. And so I'm very concerned that if we spend this $200,000, I don't know if we'll get to 8 votes on a $6 million project. I don't know if we'll get to 8 votes on a $3 million project. I don't know whether we'll be able to move forward. I'm not convinced. So I would just like to say that for the record, that there's a lot of money that we'll be tying up in our operating budget if we continue to go on the path that we've been going on. So I'm afraid also that this might end up being a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion vote, because I don't know that there's support for not just this project, but projects in general that are going to be tying up funds in our operating account, in our operating budget. We haven't gotten the school budget yet, but we've heard about capital improvement projects from the schools. That's another area where we're going to have to find money. The initial figures from the school committee as reported in the paper is a 12% increase over the budget. That over last year's budget, that's their initial level services funded budget. The schools already take up in excess of 60% of our budget and likely to increase. So I think there are some very, very serious affordability issues that we have to address. My concern with spending this $200,000 is that, well, let me say it this way. For me, if I voted yes to spend this money, it is by no means an endorsement or a yes for any future requests for funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wright. Councilor Preston.
Yes, thank you. So, I too have heard from residents about the concerns about spending, and I share those concerns. I'm by nature a saver and not a spender, and I think we do need to start taking really hard looks at prioritizations of our projects. But for me personally, that priority begins with youth services. I think youth services is very important to the city. I think it's a very important service to provide to the youth of the city, and I'm not willing to draw the line with youth services. And so that's why I chose to vote against, to vote yes to the amendment, or no against the original amendment, I guess. Because frankly, I do want to see us move forward. But frankly, I don't think we would get to 8 votes for a $2 million project, because we've heard very clearly that a $2 million project would not meet the needs of youth services. And frankly, I think it would be a waste of money to spend $2 million to build a project that doesn't meet the needs of the department that we're trying to create a home for. So I hear about the prioritization of the spending, but youth services is not the place where I'm going to start drawing a line and saying no. I am hoping that somewhere through this process, as we get to 100% design, we can find some more value engineering and hopefully bring the price down a little bit. But to me, youth services is too important, and I'm not going to vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Preston. Councilor Wallace.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. I just want to say I will not be voting for the $200,000 because I think that's a big sum of money to approve all at once. Again, I'm going to harp on the site, but I feel like if we took it in smaller chunks and got some answers along the way, maybe my concerns will never be answered, and that's okay. But I do think it's worth, I just want to say this in public, that I do think it's worth getting another licensed site professional just to look at the parts of the site that haven't been studied yet. I do think it's worth getting another round of civil engineering, get the topography so that we can determine for sure that the site access is going to work and that we have enough spots and the buses can come in or vans or whatever, because it is going to be tight. So $200,000 is a lot of money to approve all at once. I don't know what the answer would be for a smaller amount of money, but again, I'd rather even phase a design or some of the planning at first. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wallace. Further discussion? Councilor Lang.
I too have a problem with the Low Street site. I always have. Being in real estate and dealing with DEP in the past, you find something bad there, it's going to be all, the price tag goes way up, and that's just for dirty land. Look at the garage, there was dirty land there, the rail trail. I guess it's a cautionary tale, and echoing what we've heard from the at-large councilor and the Ward 1 councilor is, we're going to waste $200,000, essentially, if we pass this. I would put out a blanket statement, are you sure this is where you want to spend the money? Before you do, I'd rather take this money and give NYS a temporary home that's more suitable than what they have now. This problem isn't something that I've inherited in my time on the council, and I just have a tough time when I hear things like, yeah, this is a priority. The garage clearly shouldn't have been a priority in the past, but it was. I don't want to point any fingers at anybody or any moves of the past administration, but let's be smart with how we spend the money for NYS, and let's maybe, I'm looking at this 200,000 number. I'm thinking of the Merson building. They could rent that space. There's more temporary options that we could use this money for than on a piece of land that we're not going to get to a yes vote to. We won't. So that's my cautionary tale, and I'm going to yield with that. Just think about where we want to spend money.
Thank you, Councilor Lang. Anyone else? Councilor Zaid.
Sorry, I just want, thank you for indulging me, and I apologize to my colleagues for going around, but I had to respond to the one at-large councilor's comments about this, only from my learning curve, having been on the council for a while, that oftentimes these intermediate votes are looked at as an easier vote, and then we're just pushing off the sort of the harder conversation, and so I really appreciate the opportunity. Three interesting things. One is, it's very interesting to think that $2 million for youth services couldn't get to 8. It's sort of that discussion about where the line is and what does get 8 votes. Where can there be 8 votes? And so it's just so interesting to me, and I had to point it out, that apparently we can't get there on 2, and apparently we can't get there on 6. I mean, my brain seems to think there's somewhere that we should be having a conversation rather than setting loose an architect for the umpteenth time to go after a goal that doesn't exist. So that's one interesting thing. The second thing is, I just keep thinking to myself, from all the emails I get, what's the average resident position on this? And I keep coming back to the fact that most residents, I think, recognize the value and importance of NYS. We've talked about that. They want to see something get done, but they don't want to break the bank. That's what I hear in my email inbox, and I suspect most councilors hear the same thing. And I'm still in awe a little bit that a $2 million commitment, similar to what another community made, doesn't inhibit people from raising external funds to do more, is somehow scoffed at. And then finally, just, there's a lot of conversation on this floor all the time about process. It is unclear to me how this vote supports any positive process. So we say, here's 200, see you in 6 months. And then when we come back and we want to have that conversation about where the line is, we're going to be doing it in the context of a 100% design project. And you know what the answer is going to be. It's too late. It's 100% design. Do you want to do this project or not? And so I don't see how it supports good process either. So thank you again. I appreciate the ability to have the conversation for.
All right, Councilor Khan.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to defend why I think 2 million is not enough, because I do appreciate we do need 8 votes. I think I'm starting to hear a little bit that there's going to be some resistance to supporting, I think, what's happening here, and I hope that's not what I'm hearing. I hope we could all work collaboratively and do what's best for Newburyport Youth Services to have a home. So I feel like what's really important is the reality of what 2 million could get us, and that's what I was trying to point out. New municipal facility triggers our code. That was my point. Our point is we passed in 2021 code for buildings. And if folks need to read it, if you could even go to Code of Ordinances and look and do the search on net zero, and you'll see it. So we have kind of put something out there to say we're going to believe in this. We're going to try to strive towards municipal buildings in this city being as efficient as they can. And yes, that's at a cost. And that was, as I listened to the Budget and Finance Committee meeting, EGA Architects, when they heard this amendment, they did get up and they said, you guys have a code of ordinance here, you have some stipulation of new construction. What you are defining here is going to be difficult given how much it costs for some measures that will save you time in the long run. And that's, I know it's really hard to understand because we're so focused on first cost, but there are cost savings to be had over time and examples for the city's project. So I just want to defend, that it's not just because I'm just saying 2 million, I don't like that number because of this. No, I am actually looking at it from a realistic perspective. $350,000 from the other proposal for solar panels, that was 6,600 square feet. I looked at dollars per square feet for every square footage type of building, and that's why I'm telling you. And also what's included here too is that the 2 million will include safe access with a crosswalk across Low Street. Not going to happen in 2 million. I'm just being realistic here. I do hope we can make compromises and get to something that will work. Is it 5 million, 6 million, 10 million? They know we don't want to spend that much, but they know, and they've tried to give us some parameters to work under. So I just wanted to defend that reason why I'm not in support of the 2 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? All right, roll call.
It's the roll call on the motion to approve the transfer as is without amendment. Councilor Wright.
No.
Councilor Zede.
No.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
No.
Councilor McCauley.
No.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
No.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right.
Budget after?
Yes.
Okay.
So if folks want to stay, you can. If not, we can certainly take a recess. 5-minute recess. Discussion. All those in favor of moving Order 41 to Public Works and Safety, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right.
Next, we have Order 422, which is the rules and regulations, bylaws so-called, for the Commission on Disabilities.
Motion to send to, refer to Community Services.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor of moving to community services, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right.
Next is Ordinance 134, which is a second reading of the amendment for the municipal schedule for passport services. I believe it's going from $10 to $15.
Motion to approve on second reading?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Second reading of Ordinance 134. Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede. Councilor Cameron. Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane. Councilor McCauley. Councilor Preston. Councilor Vogel. Councilor Wallace. And Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Point of order, did we skip over 420?
I noticed that as well. Order 420, Councilwoman.
That was meant to be taken out because they were not
That explains
completed.
it.
Oh, you're looking at it online.
I'm looking for an old one.
I got you.
Second. I see it.
I do.
Okay.
So for reference, it was meant to be taken out because it was not completed based on the updates that we saw Thursday. So my apologies.
Given a new number?
Pardon?
Was it given a new number? No.
I'd have to look at it again. No, it's just removed, I believe.
Yeah. So keep it. All right, committee items. Councilor Vogel.
The update on the reuse of the Brown School. So we met and we decided that we said goodbye to our facilitator who has gotten us to the point of where we had an outline of a request for information that we have sent on to the planning director, who will take our discussion that we had at the last meeting and will come out with a final document of the request, final outline for the request for information. And we're going to meet on that on the 22nd, which is a Wednesday at 7 o'clock here in council chambers, and hopefully approve that or do whatever final bits and pieces to that and send it on to the planning director, who will then create the request for information.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Vogel.
Question?
Councilor McCauley.
Yeah, a question. I'd like to ask the chair if you wouldn't mind giving an update to the council in general. Has any public comment and interaction with the neighbor happened? And the second part of that is it safe to assume that the RFI document will constitute a report that will come back to the council as one of the prerequisites of the ad hoc itself?
Thank you. So there was a bit of public comment. There was public comment at that meeting. As far as the neighborhood or bringing it out to a public hearing, if you will, that has not taken place. We've had plenty of opportunity to hear from the public around the Brown School in the past. This request for information will come back as a document from the planning director. I believe then we have in flux the rules and regulations of the ad hoc committee, which we still need to continue to discuss. So I would answer your question by saying, I don't know. But the process is continuing. We are making progress. The whole idea behind this is to get information from developers as to what they can do with our request for what we want to do with this building. We're not going to live a pipe dream. We're going to get to the information. We have put everything into this request for information that has been asked for. Gym, parking, affordable housing, whatever it might be, we've put this into the document. That document will be put together. It will go out to the world, and we will see what can be brought to us by the developers. That's the goal. The goal is to understand what the market will bear. And then we'll put it all out there, and we'll have huge discussions about it.
And we will have a general government meeting on the 23rd to continue that discussion. Market Landing Park ad hoc, I did send out a message today regarding getting some meetings on the calendar. I know I've been derelict in getting that done this year. We do have one that we'll have on the 27th before council meeting, and then another one on March the 8th to get a few of the last items resolved and try and get that one wrapped up as well. So that's the Market Landing Park. Budget and Finance.
Motion to approve transfer 147, general fund free cash 164,891 to fire chief, fire overtime, and emergency management. Thank you. This is a free cash transfer to support some fire department, specifically personnel related expenditures. So first thing is the source of funds is free cash. Second thing is, it is fairly common for us at the end, towards the end of the fiscal year, to do a fire overtime transfer. Veteran counselors, I'm sure, will recall that. I also want to point your attention to the mid-year financial report, which the committee has not discussed yet, but will on Thursday, where there's a list of potential expected transfers, and one of them is fire coverage / overtime $215K, of which this is a part. So that's the first thing I want to say, is this is not in addition to that, this is a part of that. Committee did meet on this, and first thing, I know this has been said a few times, but just to reinforce, the fire chief position is not vacant. We have some other vacancies. This is a situation where we have a member of the staff on leave for essentially injured on duty. Injured on duty is controlled in large part by MGL 111F, which discusses how compensation is to continue when a firefighter is deemed injured on duty. And so as a result of that as a result of that leave, pardon me, so I can be consistent, it has caused other members of the staff to move up in position in order to cover those responsibilities. And as a result, that is causing those pressures on the personnel costs, obviously, because you're essentially paying two positions at the chief level, and then you've got to elevate others up to, because it's a chain of command, and so it ricochet is not the right word, but it goes down through the chain. There's a word for that that now has left my head. So
Cascades.
That's the one. Cascade. Yes. Thank you. I should yield there. But beyond that, generally speaking, the concept is that the overtime is sort of on pace with recent years. So that hasn't been overly out of control relative to recent years. There have been some other changes. For example, a dispatch firefighter has gone. A dispatcher has gone from on call to becoming a firefighter formally. So there have been some transitions. Probably we'll see some impacts on that in the budget. We will likely see another transfer. That's why I wanted to say that this is part of that broader amount, whatever it ends up needing to be in the end. And then finally, I had asked, is there insurance that typically covers this injured on duty type thing? And the answer was yes, but it pays about $1,000 a week. So this does factor that in, and it does factor in what the differences have been and what they are, generally speaking, looking forward. And eventually, all of this will sort of, when the leave ends and the presumed retirement occurs, the things will kind of fall back into place and become more of a normal thing. So again, the 164 breaks down to 80,000 for the fire chief line, 75,000 for the firefighters overtime, and then as we know, the fire chief is the emergency management director, EMD, and 9,000 of it goes to that. Upon review, the committee recommends you approve this by a vote of 2-0, 1 absent. Thank you.
Further discussion? All right. All those in favor of transfer 147, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Next is a motion to approve Order 401, 12/12/22, Karen Jones Cashman Multisport
Second.
Court gift acceptance. This is a gift being received from a resident by way of a late resident, and this is $15,000 specifically to help with the rehabbing and improving the multisport court at Cashman Park. In general, the project generally includes things like resurfacing and relining, doing some wind screening, and it is part of a broader project. This did go through the Parks Commission, and they have given their approval to the acceptance and to the broader project in general. Obviously, pickleball comes to mind. Pickleball has been done there for about a year now, somewhat on a trial basis, and by all accounts, it seems to be going actually reasonably well, so maybe there's some hope yet that we found a place that seems to be suitable and acceptable. And So that's the $15,000. The committee recommends we accept the gift with gratitude, 2-0.
Discussion. Thank you, Counselor. All those in favor of Order 401 gift acceptance, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Last one is Order 414, which is the Rotary Club gift acceptance. This is $6,182.
Second.
Thank you, sorry. Without going into all the details, since you're all very well familiar with the Bartlett Mall project in general, this is specifically about the playground that we've talked about. This is it's time to go home. This is our first accessible playground in the city, as we know. We've received $300,000 from the state. That was a grant. There were some CPC funds in the amount of about $100,000. And then the broader Bartlett Mall project, we have the CPC bond, which came through, and we'll have another vote. Then we recently reallocated some prior year Moral Money Foundation. So this is part of all of that. This also went through the Parks Commission, and they discussed it in large part on their December 15th meeting. I thank the Ward 5 councilor for pointing out their minutes to me. And so the $6,182 is specifically for a Revy wheel spinner, which is an element of the commission-approved playground plan. The Rotary, this is interesting, and some other discussions we're having. The Rotary is asking for memorialization of the gift, and that they'd like the Rotary emblem infused to the playground equipment as opposed to something on like a bench or a plaque. And then they stated in the meeting that it will require City Council acceptance. So I know we've been talking about that in another context in the ad hoc waterfront, so it's just another piece of information. In any event, the Parks Commission, having liked it and the committee having reviewed it, recommended a 2-0 approval thereof. Acceptance.
Thank you, Counselor Zaid. Discussion. Counselor Donahue.
Thank you, President. I just want to speak a little bit more to the Rotary Club gift and a little more perspective on it. They also coordinated with the Commission on Disability to specifically pick out a piece of play equipment that would most serve the community as a whole. And the reason that they're doing this is to celebrate an anniversary of the Rotary Club, and that is partially why they want to have their sort of stamp on the piece of equipment, because it is a gift that they were very specific about wanting to contribute to that piece of accessible playground equipment for a very successful playground. So there is a little bit more backstory, and the Commission on Disabilities was heavily involved in the selection with the Parks Commission. So I just wanted to include that as well.
Thank you, Counselor Donahue. Counselors.
Sorry.
All right, further discussion. All right, all those in favor of Order 414, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, Counselor Zaid.
No other business tonight. Thursday is our standing meeting, 6 o'clock, right here. Somehow we didn't really have anything come in tonight, so we're going to try and wrap up a couple of outstanding items. The Finance Director's appointment, mid-year budget report come to mind. I do also want to notice, councilors and others who are interested, that we likely will docket the NYS bond, which remains in committee. There may be some discussion around that, about what to do with it in light of tonight's vote. I'm not going to try and guess what that might be, but that's why you might see it, and those generally are the committee of the whole items. And then we have some leftover ordinances and other things, so we're really going to try and get as much done as we can to put ourselves in a good position for the torrent of work that is coming. Thank you very much. That's it for budget.
Thank you, Counselor Zaid. Community Services.
Thank you, Council President. We don't have anything coming out of committee per se in terms of an order and ordinance, but I would like to make some updates to the committee. We had a full house the other day. We had the Council of Aging and the Friends of Council of Aging come and give us a presentation. At that, what we learned from Director Paula Burke, she brought several Council of Aging board members with her. She also brought the president of the Friends of Council of Aging with her as well. And what we learned is that the year of 22 is the year of relaunch on that. They roughly handle about 1,500 seniors with a number of just Newburyport-based seniors for events, rides, and types of services. What we learned is that they reintroduced communal meals in addition to grab-and-go, wellness programs, legal advice, things like that. The Council of Aging Board focuses on a couple of different items. Food security with that was Meals on Wheels, the grab-and-go, the farmers market coupons. We have a nutrition site coordinator on staff, which oversees a lot of this that goes on. We have Our Neighbors Table come as a pickup. There's probably approximately 75 unique consumers that participate in that, out of that. From transportation, we have Council of Aging vehicles and rides to medical and essential appointments. We have Northern Essex Elder Transportation that supplements that, and we have weekly shopping shuttles to Market Basket, Walmart, and the things. But that's not all. They do additional things with Shine, that's health insurance needs and advising seniors what to do within their Medicaid programs. There's AARP tax program that had 300 unique users last year, and there's the Greater Newburyport Village that has traveling chefs and a monthly meeting somewhere between 45 and 150 people on a monthly basis. So it's very active. They also talked about the Senior and Veterans Tax Work-Off Program. They had 46 participants that donated roughly 5,100 hours of work-off from their tax programs. The Friends of Council of Aging, over the 25 years, they have committed to supporting the Council of Aging. They are 100% focused on that. They have impeccable records in terms of how they collect the money, how they account for the money, how they interact and disperse that money within the Council of Aging. As an example, they raised money when the bond shortfall came from the $5 million of the senior center was really 6.8, and they went out and they got private donations for the additional funds that were needed along the way. Truly a partner in that. But that's not what we only talked about. The next part of that was we spoke about the Parks program, and we had the administration come and present to us what was going on, what was different in the Parks program from the previous plan that was introduced. What stays is maintenance within DPS. They'll have a parks manager, a business manager. They'll have DPS admin. This is a replacement individual. The job description will be about parks, and there'll be a lot of technology being able to leverage and use MyRec, some of the email work order systems, things like that that we currently use today. The real differences come in the softer side, as we had heard over time. The adult recreation will start to grow and expand. It's under the Associate Director of Recreation, currently under NYS. They'll use MyRec as a email, online application sign-up program. We think there'll be success there. The vision will come from the Parks Commission. We, the council, have delegated our responsibility of maintaining the parks to the Parks Commission. They, in turn, had previously kind of filtered it down into a Parks Director. They will now take that back, and they will own the vision of this with support from the Planning Office, Special Project Manager, and the City Grant Writer, as well as others that are there. And the advocacy that was done previously with the Parks Conservancy will now be transferred to the Port Park Alliance, which will have a number of financial controls and backstops behind them. They will handle volunteers, fundraising, and advocacy of the parks on a daily basis. And I'd like to thank both groups for coming to us and explaining what was going on. The last piece is Wednesday. We have a public hearing on the public portion of the Parks Reorganization Plan. It'll be 6:30. It'll be hybrid. It'll be in City Hall, either here or upstairs, probably upstairs as we can imagine. And then on the 21st, we're actually having our next meeting. We will invite in the Health Director to have a conversation with us besides some committee items that we have to do. That's it. Thank you very much. I yield.
Thank you, Councilor McCauley. General government. All right, so we have appointment 373 of KP Law. Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, I will speak to what we went through in the public hearing we had with Mr. Rich, Attorney Rich from KP. He spoke to the 20 years of service KP has had for the city. We had a lot of good questions from counselors that ranged from interpretation of the charter this last year. We talked about how some of the opinions they've sent to us have been more narrow than what we've seen from the ones that have been given to the administration. We discussed possible rules of engagement with how we would be dealing with a city solicitor. One question that we did come up with that I came up with is what's going to happen if we did not approve KP as our city solicitor. And I think everyone should understand that they are ethically bound to continue working on the items that they already have with the city. And it is up to the administration to define who would be the next city solicitor. You heard tonight that the mayor is interested in giving KP a 3-month extension, which if I look at what he originally had on here, it was February 1st. So if 3 months would take KP to May 1st, if we are interested in doing that. Someone can make that amendment.
Motion to amend.
Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay.
I have a second over here.
That's
So-
So to May 1st? First and
Correct.
seconded.
This would give the mayor an opportunity to continue looking for a new city solicitor, possibly different lawyers for different pieces. KP did speak to the ability for them to work on specific items. Specifically, we could have a labor person from KP, but they would not necessarily be our city solicitor. But they could do special projects. They could do items such as labor law if that was the identified expert that the administration would want to use. But as a city solicitor, they would not be our city solicitor. We would have somebody that the mayor has had an opportunity to speak to and probably a new person appointed. So with that being said, any of the council, the committee voted 3-0 to bring it out without recommendation. So if either of my fellow councilors on the committee would like to comment, I'm happy to see if I missed anything. Councilor Vogel?
Thank you. I'm going to rise in opposition to continuing to work with KP Law. The one thing that sticks to my displeasure with them, I guess, would be the way that they communicate back and forth with us, and not solely to us, but also through the administration or copying in the administration. I feel as though if we're going to ask them a question, they should answer us as opposed to including the administration in on it, because sometimes we're trying to understand our position in it. It's not necessarily divisive. It's just trying to understand where we are. And he talked about that a little bit at the meeting and goes, oh yeah, we guess we should have, or we need to communicate that way, or whatever he said. It seems to me that that should have been like that at the beginning. So I think it's time to move on. So I'm going to vote no, and I suspect I'll probably be in the minority, but I think it's time to move on and maybe find some fresh air with a new city solicitor.
Further, so Councilor Z, then Councilor Khan. Councilor Z.
So I just have a couple of thoughts. I did make it to most of the meeting, and it was a good conversation. I guess the first thing is stability of the city is to me is paramount. So I've sort of gone back and forth on the firm over the years, and I do think there's really good rationale to see what other opportunities there might be out there for the city. And I don't know, just musing in committee, but also tonight, I think there could be opportunity to split, not to think of it as a monolith, like the city solicitor. There can be somebody who maybe is more of your day-to-day, and then you have these specialty needs, et cetera. So I think those are good. However, with that being said, two things. One is I don't think turning down this appointment is the right thing to do for the city at this juncture. Not knowing what the next answer is. And I floated the idea of 3 months in committee, and I'm glad that there's some traction. I thought about it some more. I'm happy to support 3 months. I also think another thought I came up with as I was preparing is we might want to, if the administration acquiesces, we might want to do June 30th, only because we have a budget that was set a year ago, and it carries for a year, and that budget made certain assumptions. And I'm worried about having instability. And so to me, it would make a lot of sense to do something new with a new budget, and to say, okay, we're going to have a couple different lines, or we're going to do it this way. But again, I'm not religious about that. If 3 months is where I just think we shouldn't leave here tonight saying we are turning down an appointment and therefore we're telegraphing that we have no city solicitor, which I think is a very bad position for the city to be in. The last part is the ROEs, the rules of engagement, how we work with the attorney. that's something that needs conversation. Hiring somebody doesn't just solve that problem.
Right.
It's not worth going back and looking back other than to learn from the past. But I mean, this concept of the city solicitor and their relationship with the mayor and the council, this didn't start yesterday. I mean, we had large fights, and ironically at the time, some argued the other direction that, of course, the solicitor sort of belongs to the mayor. I don't know, whatever those arguments were at the time. So I still support a sort of separation to some degree, but clarity, because I think a bad position for the taxpayers is the city council is paying an attorney to fight with a mayor's attorney that's being paid for there, and we're just paying hundreds of dollars an hour for them to yell at each other. That seems like an illogical position. So I'd like to have that conversation. I just want to be clear that I don't think just getting a new city solicitor just solves all the problems that we perceive and that we likely actually have in real life. So thank you.
Good points. Councilor Khan.
Great. Thank you, Council President. I appreciated having the opportunity as Committee of the Whole to talk to KP Law. It was actually, I thought it was a good discussion because for me it was the first time to really be able to talk about situations that we've gone through and to get kind of their Attorney Rich's reaction and maybe response. And I was actually very encouraged. I was one of the ones that brought up the example of, at times we're going to have to ask something that might be taken in different ways by the administration, and I felt like it was really unfair that they went right away and told the administration, and then I was called out on it on the floor, by someone saying, "Oh, I heard you talk to them about this. Why did you do that?" And it put me in an awkward position. So I brought up that example, and I thought Attorney Rich kind of understood that, and I think part of it is I'm willing to keep working to the level of capacity that we have in some manner. Like, I don't want to see them gone completely. Actually, now that I think more about it, I think the counselor from Ward 2 made a really good suggestion for the amendment for 3 months, and I had to think about it, so I think I will support that. I also want to remember we are being on this body when it was split, and the City Council does have its own budget line item, which I believe is at, if I'm not mistaken, maybe $5,000, unless it's gone up. But sometimes it would be nice to have some type of a list of other attorneys we could reference. And I don't know if we fully vetted that or talked about that, but maybe that might be a direction. But I would support another 3 months with KP Law, and I thank the Ward 2 counselor for actually making that amendment. Thank you.
Further discussion. Councilor Wallace.
Yes, thank you. I seem to remember Council President Igerman a couple years ago working that into the contract where anything that went to the mayor also went to the city council, and anything that went to city council also went to the mayor. Maybe, I don't know if that's still in there, but I think that was the intent, just so that you wouldn't have these, arguments about what's fair and not fair. And also, I just want to point out, I think the June 30th deadline makes a lot of sense, because that's the end of the budget season, and 3 months may be enough, but maybe not by the time, they choose someone and get up and running, so. I would
confirm the amendments, my amendment.
Sure. So moved.
Yeah.
Did you just accept June?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yeah, I'm going to vote against the amendment for 6 months. I think that we should hire them for the year, and we should go get a second attorney and work through that. I think that given what we have on our plate and given our proclivity for turning things around in 60 days, 90 days, whatever the case may be, I don't think we're going to do anything till mid-August or September when we try to get engaged with a real attorney, testing them out, rules of engagement, getting the things that we want to have up front prior to engaging an attorney. So I don't think there's any harm or foul. I know it's a message being sent that we only want to, we're only here for another 6 months. But I'd suggest we go for the full year, stay consistent with the charter, evaluating a law firm over like one meeting, a recommendation in one meeting, and then saying, we want to change things a little bit. I think we should have been engaged for the last 60 days or so prior to this going forward. So that's my 2 cents. I'm going to vote against that. I will vote for a full year of KP Law, but I have an expectation that we will kick the tires on other attorneys in different venues so that when next year comes, we're not in this situation again. Thank you.
Further discussion? All right. Roll call on the amendment.
So we have on the floor a motion to amend that date of February 1st to June 1st, correct?
June 30th.
June 30th.
Last day of the fiscal year.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley? No. Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
No.
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. That is it for general government. We do,
Now you got to vote on
oh,
that.
I'm sorry.
Amended? Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
thanks. Vote on the actual,
Motion approved as amended to
Thank you.
June 30th.
getting old. Roll call.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
No.
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Now I'm done with general government. Just letting folks know, since next Monday is a holiday, I did have the meeting posted for the Thursday. So it'll be Thursday at 6 o'clock, I believe is what was on the, no, I'm sorry, it's Thursday at 5:30 for the next meeting for general government. License and permits, Councilor Vogel.
Nothing to report.
Councilor Cameron, planning and development.
Thank you, President. I'd like to make a motion to approve Order 416, the Newburyport Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan 2022. Thank you. And I'm going to take that in this order, so,
Recusal.
Point of order.
yes. Okay. So we have a couple of guests in attendance, and before we get to the other appointments and whatnot, give them a chance to speak to the council about this matter. So this was brought to the full council at the end of January with some, some urgency to get this done. The multi-hazard mitigation plan, or the hazard mitigation plan, is a 5-year plan. We last did one of these in 2016 that went through 2010. The two principal writers are from the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission, and they're here. Cecilia Gerstenbacher and Hannah Morganson. Might be close on the names, with apologies. And also Julia Gottfredson, our conservation administrator, is here, and I think Andy Port may be out remotely if we need them. So this new plan, again, qualifies us for federal funds, particularly from FEMA, that relate to natural hazards. The document, which was in the earlier packet when this was brought to the full council, it updates various components, so it IDs hazards and talks about the different risk assessment and developing mitigation goals and action plans. So there's 78 different critical facilities throughout the city that need to be protected, and 30 actions were identified. The public process, which it was commented, there was a public meeting in May of 2020 where there was I think a link snafu, not as well attended as it could have been. But there was some limited public input, and obviously city staff and a whole range of folks participated that spoke to the authors. This was then sent to MEMA, the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, for their comments, then sent to FEMA, Federal Emergency Management, for their edits. And right now we're in, I think the term is approval pending adoption. And we as a council need to approve this in order for it to take effect. I'd ask any one of the three that wants to give a little bit of an overview, and then I'll talk a little bit about the conversation that we had in committee.
Sure.
Yes, yep.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Cecilia Gerstenbacher. I am the Environmental Program Coordinator with the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission. I will say my predecessor, Jen Hughes, did do a lot of this preliminary writing, but we've been engaged with the city in the public comment and working with FEMA and MEMA to get the plan to the state, to the approval pending adoption state. I do think that you covered a lot of my comments, so I appreciate that very much. But I will say we've been working on this plan for about a year and a half now. The plan lapsed in 2021, and that's when we began working on a new plan. I will say, for the entirety of the region, there's only, out of our 15 communities, about 2 communities that are currently in compliance. So do not feel that because this took a year and a half, that is an extensive period of time. That's pretty typical. And most of our communities are non-compliant and are still waiting to get up and going on this. So in the perspective of achieving funds from FEMA, you're in a very good position, I would say, because you will have a compliant plan prior to the majority of the region. So that planning process started in 2021, went to 2023, and here we are now. We got public participation back in May of 2022. We also got some comments from the City Council, which we were able to incorporate. Sent it off to MEMA, the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, got some comments from them as well. And then most recently sent it off to FEMA, had a couple round of edits with them, namely to incorporate a couple new hazards that had come about. Tsunamis we had to incorporate, which was very interesting, but also coastal erosion, which was important to the city. So we worked to incorporate those, and FEMA most recently issued us approval pending adoption, which gives us 1 year to adopt the plan. And FEMA has given their seal of approval on the plan. It has checked all of the FEMA boxes. This process is very, very heavily guided by FEMA requirements. The plans, there's little sway in what you can put in the plan. A lot of the components have to be checked off by FEMA, but they gave us that A-OK. And so we come before you now for adoption of that plan. And I'd be happy to list all 78 critical infrastructures and all 30 actions. There's a couple that come to mind. I'm not going to list all of them. I don't have them memorized.
We're in one right now.
But some of the actions that come to mind are putting some berms by the wastewater treatment plant to protect from coastal flooding, raising the dam, the Artichoke Dam, to protect also from coastal flooding, also engaging the community, doing some education and outreach with them regarding the hazards, and doing some updates to zoning bylaws to prevent building in high hazard FEMA flood areas, convening a group to discuss the Plum Island Initiative a little bit more. So there's an extensive list of actions. I will say they are not binding by any means. They can certainly be expanded upon. They can be edited. There's an opportunity for during every plan update for you to explain if you haven't achieved some of the plan actions, why. They're pretty lenient on that. They just want to know why. And it's certainly flexible there. It's not binding. The real intention behind listing those actions is to list ones that we are looking for money for FEMA from. So when you go after that money, they say, oh, this is in your plan. That's fantastic. So they're aware of it prior to that. And yeah, I think it's a pretty solid plan. It's a fantastic list of actions, and I'm hopeful to see them conducted in the next 5 years.
Excellent. Yeah.
Counselor,
No, I'll let the chair.
No, sure. You go ahead.
Counselor Khan.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So you said 5 years the plan will be active for. In your experience in terms of making changes, like you were saying, if there were changes within the 5-year, that was the one you were talking about, the process, that if we felt a need. Does it at all hinder like getting any funding assistance on any of these? Or is this kind of meant to be a document that can help in getting funding if we need be?
That's entirely what it's meant for, yes. It wouldn't hinder you in any way. If you want to make a change to that plan, you don't necessarily have to amend it. You can just continue updating it year to year as you make progress or as efforts change, and then once you hit that 5-year mark, that's when you would incorporate changes. And when you would talk retroactively and say, this action didn't work out for us, we decided to take this route instead. So it doesn't hinder you in any way. If anything, it opens you, I feel, to a lot of FEMA fund opportunities.
Okay, and then my second question, and maybe this is more for Julia, is this the first time? I know this is a 2022 plan. Was there one then 5 years before? Was that the 2018?
Yes.
2016, that.
And there were several iterations of the plan prior to that. I don't know when the first one. 2008?
2008 was the
We've
first.
been going on 5-year intervals since around 2008.
Got it.
The difference is that the previous plan was a regional plan. And this is the first time that Newburyport has had its own plan. We sort of withdrew ourselves from the regional plan so that we could tailor this more to our own needs. We're different than a lot of the communities within our region, being a city and having some different resources, et cetera. So this will suit us, I think, a lot better.
Excellent.
I'll also say it allows you to speed up the timeline a little bit when you're not waiting for other communities to gather around in similar situations and approve the plan.
Got it. No, thank you. That's helpful. So the municipal vulnerability preparedness effort that we had done was separate, but I'm hoping with this, there's some, was that looked at as part of the, okay, so.
Fed right into it in a lot of ways. Yeah,
Perfect.
in a lot of areas. Not every area, and this is much broader. This is looking at many more risks associated with all sorts of hazards, not just climate resilience.
Yep. Those plans are really interactive with each other. I would say the HMP process is really just the federal version of the MVP process. MVP is at the state level, and the HMP is at the federal level, but they're very interactive, and in a lot of instances, they're very overlapping.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Councilor Cameron?
Just a couple of comments, and any councilor who was in committee could add if they want to. We did talk about some of the concerns along the Merrimack, and there was somewhere in here, I forget which page it is, there was a little bit of a mention of raising Water Street near Union Street is kind of a flood-prone area. And also I was interested in the Plum Island Causeway, which has been brought up a little bit. I think when the drawbridge was put in, that part of the road was put in. I think long-term, that should be something we should start talking about sooner rather than later. And I think Julia mentioned that if we do that, we also may need to be raising roadways on Plum Island, so this is one of these things where you do one thing that seems good and then you find yourself getting drawn into doing other things. But I think we should approach that with a lot of intentionality. And and it was also mentioned, and it sounds like the city's working on an emergency center on Plum Island. It sounds like we don't have one right now, technically, but that was another point that was raised. But we did approve it 3-0 in committee, and ask for your approval.
Councilor Khan?
Yeah, sorry. It just, thank you, Council President. This one was in the first packet. I just want to point out for anyone trying to find it. Is it on the city's webpage yet? Because when I was just doing a search, I didn't see, but it is there. It looks like I'm getting a nod here from one of our councilors. Okay, I just want to point out it's not in this packet, but it was when it got introduced.
We should make sure that, or I'll make sure in the future things are the whole kit and caboodles.
It's there.
Great, thank you.
Further questions or comments? All right. Councilor Wright.
Just quickly, just wanted to touch on the my feelings in regard to the public comments and the opportunity to weigh in were, in my opinion, were severely impacted by the issue where the one and only opportunity for the public to weigh in, the incorrect link was posted to that meeting. So I feel that there were a lot of people who would have wanted to weigh in on this that didn't have the opportunity to do that. And so now this is the only other opportunity we have, and the plan's already been blessed by MEMA and blessed by FEMA. So I don't advocate for holding this up, but I think it's something that we should maybe in the future be more careful. And when we do have a failure of technology, that we provide another opportunity for people to weigh in. I think another meeting a week later might have been in order for us to cover that item and provide more opportunity. But having said that, I don't think it's that is a reason to delay the acceptance of the order by us.
Thank you, Councilor Wright. Further discussion or comments? All right. All those in favor of approving Order 416, say aye. 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 Opposed? All right. Councilor Cameron.
Councilor Wallace. Councilor Wallace. And thank you for coming tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Feel free to stay.
Thank you.
There's a lot of hazards here. You should get out of town.
Multi-hazards. A lot of mitigation. All right, thank you. I am going to approach these piecemeal, but I think we can move pretty quickly through these. So I'd like to make a motion to approve appointment 366, which is Christopher Sawtell to Historical Commission. Thank you. Chris is here. Thank you for staying, Chris. You're not going to be put on the spot, but feel free to stand. So we did approve Chris 3-0. So he's had a long-standing interest in historical preservation here in Newburyport, long-standing resident, and was given a firm thumbs up by Glenn Richards, who's the chair of the Historical Commission. We just asked why interested, and just really loves living in a historic place, and I believe has some knowledge of homes and construction. I may be paraphrasing there a little bit, but we thought he'd be a great addition to the Historical Commission, and we approved that 3-0.
Further comments or discussion? All right, roll call.
And that was seconded by?
Zeed?
Appointment 366, Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zeed.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue. Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
And Councilor Shan.
Yes.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. Motion to approve appointment 376.
Second.
Thank you. And I'll explain there's two listings here for Jennifer Blanchet. So this would be a reappointment as zoning administrator, and the second one, or excuse me, the one that goes through 12/31/2024, which I just made the motion on, that would be the one that we would approve. The other one was mistakenly put forth with an incorrect date, so having it go to 12/31/24, I believe, lines up with our code of ordinances. And basically, she's the first person in this job. I think it was 2017, part-time. Maybe that was a trial basis. I do vaguely remember being on the council then. In 2018, went full-time, and then in 2020, it went to a 2-year appointment. She finds it a challenging role because you're both serving as the administrator, making decisions about zoning, but you're also the enforcement person, so you have many challenging situations there, as we can imagine. But I think very committed to the work, and we approved her 3-0.
Further comments? Councilor Wright.
I should have asked Jennifer this question, but I'll ask it to the administration, or at least I'll point it out. I'm hopeful that the administration will be able to achieve the right balance between enforcing zoning and making zoning recommendations, and then the importance of our financial situation, where we want to, within reason, encourage as much new growth as we can, because it's the lifeblood of our financial system. It's the only part of the budget that we can grow over and above our 2.5%. So that would be my only comment, is that in evaluating her success, it should be through the lens of managing those two competing priorities.
Thank you, Councilor Wright. Further comments? All right, roll call.
All those in favor of appointment 376. Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zeed.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, President. Motion to receive and file appointment 363.
Yes.
And as I said, that was a mistake, and the one we just approved will set the matter straight.
Do we need a roll call on receiving and filing that one?
I don't think so.
Okay. Yes. We don't? All right. All those in favor of receiving and filing appointment 363, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Counselor Cameron.
Thank you. Motion to approve appointment 369, Carol Wagan, Conservation Commission. Thank you. So Carol joined us remotely. She's a lawyer. She's also, I believe, the chair or the president of the Newburyport Bar Association. This is a, let's see here. I got a lot of paper. It is a reappointment. And she's been on for a couple of years, very much enjoys it. She also said that Julia Gottfredson is wonderful. Julia's not here now, so she can't hear that, but we did approve her 3-0.
Discussion. Roll call.
Counselor Wright.
Yes.
Counselor Zede.
Yes.
Counselor Cameron.
Yes.
Counselor Donahue. Counselor Khan.
Yes.
Counselor Lane.
Yes.
Mr. McCauley.
Yes.
Counselor Preston.
Yes.
Counselor Vogel.
Yes.
Counselor Wallace.
Yes.
Counselor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion to approve appointment 370, David Vine, Conservation Commission. Thank you. We also approved this appointment 3-0. David could not join us that night. Sent me via email just an explanation of his background. He's been on the Conservation Commission for a number of years now, had been on previously, was a well-known engineer for many years, and just, I think has really contributed a lot to the Concom, so we did approve him 3-0.
Counselor Khan.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. I mean, I just wanted to say, I think, even though they're reappointments, it would be nice to have resumes, because some of us are still new to maybe some of the folks, so I would just encourage, I don't see anything for both of them when they came in today's packet, so at some point, it would be nice for the packet that's available that we have those resumes in there. If I could have the administration put that in, then at least it's public document as well. Thank you.
Thank you for the reminder. Roll call.
Appointment 370, Counselor Wright.
Yes.
Counselor Zede. Yes. Counselor Cameron.
Yes.
Counselor Donahue.
Yes.
Counselor Khan.
Yes.
Counselor Lane.
Yes.
Counselor McCauley.
Yes.
Counselor Preston.
Yes.
Counselor Vogel.
Yes.
Counselor Wallace.
Yes.
Counselor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion to approve appointment 374. Second. So this is Karen Weiner, reappointment to the Affordable Housing Trust. She was not able to join us that evening. She's been on the Affordable Housing Trust for over 10 years. Some people may know Karen. She's been at the Citizens Housing and Planning Association, also known as CHAPA, which is a statewide advocate for housing for probably 25, 30 years, longtime Newburyport resident, and I think has really made a contribution in a variety of ways, and we did approve her 3-0.
Discussion. Roll call.
On Karen Weiner, Counselor Wright.
Yes.
Zede.
Yes.
Counselor Cameron.
Yes.
Counselor Donahue.
Yes.
Counselor Khan.
Yes.
Counselor Lane.
Yes.
Counselor McCauley.
Yes.
Counselor Preston.
Yes.
Counselor Vogel.
Yes.
Counselor Wallace.
Yes.
Counselor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you. And now I'm going to backtrack to Communication 455 with a motion to receive and file net zero report on the West End Fire Station.
Second.
Thank you. So this came to the full council back in December, and obviously we've approved the bonding for the additional funds for the fire station, so this was kind of seen as a moot communication.
Good.
And we voted 3-0 to receive and file.
Counselor Khan.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President. I do want to point people to our ordinance 5-84. So any plan, and this will happen with youth services too, does have to go to the Energy Advisory Committee, which is one of the reasons for this. So once there is a full plan, we've kind of put it in our code of ordinances that it does need to go before to show and demonstrate what it's doing for net zero. So I just wanted to let people know that's in our ordinance. Thank you.
All those in favor of receiving and filing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
And I'm going to recuse myself on appointment 371.
Who's going to present?
I'll do it.
So This is an appointment for Suzanne Morazi Cameron. So the reason for Ed's recusal is fairly apparent. It's his wife. So we had a long chat with her about the Affordable Housing Trust. She was available to answer questions and gave us some idea of some of the things that the Affordable Housing Trust is considering, none of which has come out with a favorable vote yet. But we did vote in committee to approve this appointment through 2/1/2025 with a vote of 2-0 with 1 abstention.
Thank you, Councilor.
Second.
Further discussion? Roll call.
So on appointment 371, Councilor Wright,
Yes.
Councilor Z, Councilor Cameron,
Recused.
of course, Councilor Donahue,
Yes.
Councilor Khan,
Yes.
Councilor Lane, Councilor McCauley,
Yes.
Councilor Preston,
Yes.
Councilor Vogel,
Yes.
Councilor Wallace, and Councilor Shamp.
Yes.
Council President, I just want to make a note too, both of those did not have resumes in, so for putting them all in, we also need for those guys.
Thank you.
Get in the picture. Thank you. All right. Anything else, Councilor Cameron?
Nothing further right now.
All right. Councilor Wallace, Public Works and Safety.
Yes. Motion to approve appointment 375.
Second.
All right, this is the temporary appointment of Jamie Tuckalo until April 16th, 2023. Chief of Staff Andrew Levine was at the meeting and explained, a lot of the focus was on process, so he explained the process in the past and the process going forward. There was some concern by some of the counselors or confusion on the process in the past. And the request was just to make sure that the process going forward is transparent. As we heard the mayor tonight, apparently it's going pretty quickly. One of the issues was there was no resume included. So the committee did vote in favor, 3-0, with the condition to include Jamie Tuckalo's resume, which was sent to the council and included in the packet. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Wallace. Councilor Khan.
Thank you, Council President. I know we got an update on the process in terms of our search for a DPS director, and I was just wondering in terms of the timing, is this, this appointment looks like it's going to the middle of April, and just a question on that timing and how does that work in relation to getting someone there? Is this too long? So I was wondering, would we want to amend this, given that there seems to be some traction going in this area, at least from the mayor's update? I wonder if we could speak to that.
Yeah, I would say that we are moving towards final interviews, and we look forward to making an appointment as soon as we can, which could happen, you know, in the coming weeks, and that would give you enough time to be able to then confirm that appointment. The advantage to giving yourself more time with 3 months is, you know, we could end that appointment at any time and then name the next person once we have them, especially since it's someone who's who we know is internal and is just filling this until we have the full person. But you could move to shorten it. We could try to guess as to when that would be best. Could probably do it for 2 months safely, but I leave that to the council.
Further questions? Councilor Vogel?
I'm just wondering then, on that particular note, would it be possible to amend the appointment to the particular date or sooner as a full-time person or a permanent person comes on? Would that language work?
Make an amendment?
Anybody? I'll motion that. Anybody?
I'm sorry, so what was the
Well, I
amendment?
mean, if we're thinking that there might be somebody permanent.
Point of order? I don't believe we have the capacity as the council to change the date that's in, yeah.
I would agree.
Right, needs to go through Councilor, not Councilor, but Mr. Levine.
Can I just ask for a clarification of what the proposed date would be?
Councilor.
Well, what I was suggesting is, I mean, perhaps if you're going to bring on a permanent person before the end of this appointment, this temporary appointment, I mean, do you have the latitude to bring that person in and and this temporary appointment? Do you want the latitude to do that? I don't know. I was just asking. It was.
That's a possibility. I can be comfortable with that.
Counselor Lang?
Just to chime in, I think it makes sense to keep this date because even if it's not the same person named who gets the job, that someone's got to train somebody for.
That's
So I
fine.
mean, it's
was
kind of
just
a
trying- yeah.
kind of a moot point. I would just leave it as is and.
Yeah,
Yeah, withdraw that then.
okay.
Just asking.
So withdraw the second? Okay.
Yes.
Counselor Zede?
Thank you. You know, I think the process conversation is quite important, and I'm glad to have been asked to be on the committee. But because it has to do with a person, I just want to stand and say thank you to Jamie. For myself anyways, I'm a ward counselor, and he's been out with me in 6 feet of water and more and less and winter, and I think ward counselors have different relationships sometimes with staff, but these are always tough things with people, and the process does need to take place, and it will take place, and I'm confident that it will hopefully come up with a good result, and we will have a transparent process, but I just didn't want to lose sight of that in this case, and he's been very good to my ward and to me in terms of being responsive to resident needs, and I appreciate that, so I just want to throw that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Zede. Further discussion?
I just want to
Counselor Lang?
stand and say the same. And knowing personally a lot of the members of the DPS and the morale there is just incredible right now. So thank you to Interim Director Tucolo as well.
Thank you, Counselor Lang. Counselor Vogel?
Thank you. Thank you, Council President. My initial reaction to this was to not vote in favor. Certainly not vote in favor of Jamie or without mentioning him, the applicant. It has nothing to do with him. I am mostly concerned about the way the process has gone, the delay in the process, the delay in looking, the Code of Ordinances, particularly our charter as we speak, and we're just kind of going past the dates. And those things really do trouble me. And I did take some time and ask the Chief of Staff if he would explain to me, it was brought up during the committee meeting about, why is it that the deputy can't do what he's, the deputy of the director, why can't he do what the director is doing? It only made intuitive sense to me that if you're a deputy and the director is not there, then you can do the deputy's work. Well, apparently that's not the way it is. That because of the union conflict and so on and so forth, there's that issue. So a deputy director cannot step into a director's position and do what formally what the director is doing. And I think that is a hole in the process. And I suggested to the Chief of Staff that perhaps when through the charter review or through negotiations, that gap be closed, so that if we face this again and we have a director be gone, that the deputy director then can assume those duties and not necessarily need to go through this process. So I think that's a hole that needs to be fixed. Again, I was going to stand not in favor of this appointment, not the person, but the process. However, I will go ahead and stand in favor of it.
Thank you, Counselor Vogel. Further discussion or comments? All right, roll call.
So motion to approve the appointment until April 16, 2023. Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Present?
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Wallace?
Nothing further. Thank you.
All right. Good of the order. Counselor Donahue.
Thank you, Chair. And just to quickly explain my last vote of president, I just felt uncomfortable because I was on the committee that was interviewing people, and I just feel like a little awkward about it. Anyway, not the reason I wanted to stand up this evening. I wanted to actually make a couple of announcements. I'm hosting my first ward meeting with constituents this Saturday at 10 a.m. at the library in the programming room. And while I have put it out to the recipients of my email list, I just wanted to put the word out a little bit more that I'll be meeting with constituents to talk about what's going on in the ward, and hopefully get some feedback on some resident feedback from neighbors around the Brown School is part of the goal. Secondly, there's been a lot of conversation. I know you've all seen the newspaper articles, and some of you may or may not have listened to the interview on the local Post this Saturday, but I am planning a public information presentation this Thursday at 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. in the main room at the Senior Community Center to essentially answer a lot of questions about why I would like to revisit bringing adult cannabis retail back to Newburyport for conversation. So you can mark your calendars for those 2 dates, spread the word, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Donahue. Councilor Vogel?
Just real quick.
We announced earlier that the general government meeting next week is on the 23rd. The public calendar shows it on the 20th.
I'll get that fixed. Thank you.
You're welcome. And it also shows that license and permits is on the 20th, but we won't be having a meeting.
Okay, get that changed. Just a friendly reminder, the public hearing Wednesday night for the parks, 6:30, and anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.